Remember those lost 10-minute recipes African Americans cooked just to make it through? They turned scraps into hearty plates fast, keeping families full when times were rough. What secrets of grit and flavor are still waiting to be tasted? Molasses cornbread skillet came together in a rush of sweet aroma and sizzling iron, a lifesaver when time and money were short. The batter started with simple cornmeal and a spoonful of baking powder stirred into warm milk. Then dark molasses flowed in to lend a deep, earthy sweetness that turned every bite into comfort. A heavy cast iron pan was heated until nearly smoking, greased with whatever fat was on hand, and the batter poured in with a hiss that filled the room with the promise of quick nourishment. 10 minutes later, the edges pulled from the pan, the center set firm, and the top turned golden brown while the bottom formed a crust that crackled beneath a knife. Families sliced it thick, eating it plain when sugar was scarce or drizzling a little syrup if luck allowed. This skillet bread needed no fancy ingredients or long waiting, only a hot fire and steady hand, making it the kind of meal that fed weary workers before dawn or after a long day in the fields. Sugar-top hoe cakes were a blessing when the cupboard looked bare and stomachs were already rumbling. Cornmeal was mixed with a splash of water, a pinch of salt, and just enough sweet sugar to lift the flavor, then scooped by hand onto a smoking skillet slicked with bacon grease. The cakes sizzled and popped as they browned within minutes, the edges crisping while the center stayed soft and warm. Children often hovered close, eager to snatch the first cake off the griddle while the sugar still glistened on top like a thin, glassy crust. For many families, these hoe cakes doubled as breakfast and supper, eaten straight from the pan or layered with scraps of fried meat if any was left from the night before. They proved that a handful of cornmeal and a bit of patience could stretch into a meal that filled bellies and hearts alike, a quick victory against the gnawing hunger that lingered through lean times. Okra and tomato skillet toss captured the garden's gifts in one quick sweep of the spoon, perfect for warm evenings when the sun dropped low and appetites grew sharp. Fresh or canned tomatoes were chopped and tossed into hot oil with slices of tender okra, their flavors melding as steam rose from the pan. A pinch of salt, cracked pepper, and a splash of vinegar coaxed out a bright tang while the okra softened and released its subtle sweetness. In less than 10 minutes, the dish turned silky and rich, ready to spoon over rice or eat with nothing more than a hunk of bread. Families prized this meal for using whatever the garden offered, stretching a modest harvest into something filling and colorful. The sizzle of vegetables and iron and the sharp scent of tomato filled small kitchens with hope and homegrown pride, a reminder that even the simplest ingredients could make a supper worth remembering when time and supplies were running thin. Peanut stew with rice was a bold, nourishing dish born from West African traditions and adapted to the speed of a 10-minute meal. Leftover rice from yesterday's supper warmed quickly, while a handful of peanuts was ground into a paste and thinned with hot water to create a creamy sauce. Onions and garlic sautéed in a little fat gave the stew a savory backbone as the peanut mixture bubbled into a fragrant gravy. If there was a scrap of smoked meat or a pinch of chili pepper, it found its way into the pot, but even without extras, the flavor was deep and rich. When poured over hot rice, the stew coated every grain, providing protein and comfort in each bite. Families cherished this recipe for its speed and its tie to ancestral flavors, a taste of heritage that fit neatly into a hurried morning or a weary evening. In the toughest days, it proved that tradition and survival could share the same bowl. Hot water cornbread patties were the fastest answer to empty stomachs, using only boiling water, cornmeal, and a pinch of salt to create golden cakes in minutes. The scalding water bloomed the cornmeal into a pliable dough that could be shaped by hand and dropped straight into hot fat. Each patty sizzled fiercely, the edges crisping almost immediately, while the center remained tender and warm. Children loved the hiss of batter meeting oil, a sound that promised food without delay. These small rounds cooked so quickly that a family could sit to eat before the firewood even burned low. Eaten plain or with a drizzle of cane syrup if fortune smiled, they were as close to instant bread as survival cooking could offer. In kitchens where time and ingredients were scarce, Hot water cornbread patties proved that simplicity and speed could still bring satisfaction and a sense of care to a hard day's meal. Field pea stir-fry turned leftover peas into a 10-minute marvel, saving both time and precious ingredients. Pre-cooked field peas were tossed into a hot skillet with diced onions and small cubes of smoked salt pork, the fat sizzling as it released a savory aroma. A quick splash of vinegar or a grind of black pepper added brightness, while the peas heated through, soaking up the smoky flavor. The dish went from cold to steaming in less time than it took to set the table, offering a hearty side or even a full meal with a piece of bread. For families working long days in the fields, this recipe fit perfectly between dawn chores and midday labor, delivering protein and comfort without delay. The simple combination of earthy peas and salty pork made each bite deeply satisfying, proof that even the humblest leftovers could be reborn into something new and memorable with only a hot pan and a few quick turns of the spoon. Mustard green sauté brought bright flavor and vital nutrients to the table with almost no effort. Freshly washed greens were cut into ribbons and tossed into a skillet slicked with a spoonful of hot oil and a clove of crushed garlic. The leaves wilted in moments, turning a deep emerald as a splash of vinegar or squeeze of lemon sharpened their natural bite. A pinch of salt and a dusting of pepper finished the dish, creating a vibrant side that tasted far richer than its brief cooking time suggested. In less than 10 minutes, the greens softened into a tender, tangy pile that could top cornbread, rice, or simply stand alone. Families valued this quick method for preserving the garden's bounty and adding something fresh to otherwise heavy meals. Mustard green sauté proved that speed and simplicity could still deliver a dish that nourished body and spirit, turning a handful of backyard leaves into a feast of color and flavor on even the leanest days. Redeye ham gravy over grits provided a powerful start to the morning with almost no weight at all. Thin slices of ham were quickly fried until their edges crisped and their fat rendered into the pan. Then a strong pour of black coffee was added to create the signature Redeye gravy. The hot liquid hissed as it loosened the savory bits from the skillet, blending into a smoky, salty brew that smelled like dawn itself. Meanwhile, yesterday's leftover grits were reheated with a splash of water until creamy once again, ready to cradle the bold sauce. In less than 10 minutes, the meal was ready, the deep flavor of ham and coffee soaking into every spoonful. Workers heading into long days treasured this combination for its hearty comfort and jolt of caffeine, a breakfast that woke the senses and filled the stomach in equal measure. Redeye ham gravy over grits turned simple scraps into something that tasted like luxury. Sweet potato hash turned a handful of root vegetables into a warm and filling dish before the morning sun climbed high. Diced sweet potatoes hit the skillet with chopped onions and a pinch of pepper, the sizzling oil carrying their caramel scent through the kitchen. As the cubes browned, their edges crisped while the insides turned soft and naturally sweet, creating a beautiful contrast of textures. A quick toss with a bit of salt and a splash of cider vinegar brightened the flavor, making every bite lively and rich. Families relied on this hash to stretch small harvests, often pairing it with a single fried egg when available, or simply eating it straight from the pan. The quick cooking time and modest ingredients made it perfect for early starts or late suppers, proof that a few simple vegetables could still create a meal worth remembering when resources were thin. Sweet potato hash remains a testament to resourceful cooking and the comfort of a warm skillet. Blackeyed peacakes offered a crisp, hearty meal with almost no effort, transforming yesterday's peas into golden patties in minutes. Cooked peas were mashed with a handful of cornmeal and a pinch of salt, then shaped into small cakes that hit hot oil with a satisfying hiss. The outside browned quickly into a crunchy crust while the inside stayed soft and earthy, full of quiet richness. Served plain with a dash of hot sauce or alongside greens, these cakes filled plates and bellies without draining precious supplies. Families praised the recipe for its speed and thrift, turning a modest pot of beans into something that felt like a feast. Even children enjoyed the crisp edges and gentle flavor, proof that necessity could create its own kind of delicacy. Blackeyed peacakes captured the essence of survival cooking. Fast, frugal, and unexpectedly delicious. A reminder that with a little creativity, even the simplest leftovers could shine. Fried cabbage with salt pork brought smoky comfort to hungry kitchens in a matter of minutes. Strips of salt pork hit the skillet first, their fat rendering into a sizzling base that filled the room with a savory aroma. Shredded cabbage followed, hissing as it met the hot fat and quickly softening into silky ribbons. A sprinkle of black pepper and a splash of cider vinegar brightened the flavors, while the pork pieces crisped into salty bites that clung to the tender greens. In less than 10 minutes, the dish transformed from raw leaves into a hearty side or even a main meal when served with a hunk of bread. Families who had little more than a cabbage and a slice of cured meat found this recipe a dependable way to stretch supplies and keep everyone satisfied. Its speed and bold taste turned an ordinary vegetable into a memorable dish, proving that with heat, patience, and a single pan, simple ingredients could create warmth and sustenance during the hardest days. Molasses milk bread toast made the most of day-old loaves, turning scraps into a sweet, rich treat without wasting a crumb. Thick slices of slightly stale bread were dipped in a quick bath of warm milk to soften their edges, then fried in butter until golden and crisp. As the bread sizzled, its scent filled the kitchen, signaling a breakfast that felt indulgent despite its humble origins. A drizzle of deep, dark molasses added a caramel-like sweetness that soaked into every crevice, creating a dessert-like breakfast ready in minutes. Children often crowded around the stove waiting for their share, and adults cherished the comfort of something warm and sweet before a day of work. This recipe turned leftovers into a celebration, a reminder that resourcefulness could create moments of pleasure even in lean times. Molasses milk bread toast remains a testament to frugality and flavor, proof that yesterday's bread and a spoonful of syrup could still bring smiles to the morning table. Sorghum oat cakes provided hearty energy for long days while demanding barely any time to prepare. Rolled oats were quickly cooked in hot water until soft, then mixed with a generous pour of sorghum syrup for natural sweetness. The warm mixture was pressed into small cakes and lightly browned in a hot skillet, forming a crisp exterior while staying tender inside. Their nutty aroma and gentle sweetness made them a favorite for both breakfast and late-night snacks, offering quick nourishment without expensive ingredients. Families appreciated how the oats filled stomachs, and the sorghum added a rich, earthy flavor that refined sugar could not match. In households where every penny mattered, these cakes proved that a simple pantry could still produce something special in minutes. They traveled well, too, wrapped in cloth for field work or school lunches, ensuring no one went hungry between meals. Sorghum oat cakes embodied the spirit of making do with what you had, transforming basic staples into a warm, sustaining dish that tasted far richer than its cost. Catfish nuggets turned fresh or leftover fillets into a golden feast with lightning speed. Small chunks of fish were dredged in seasoned cornmeal, their surfaces coated with a thin layer that crisped beautifully in hot oil. As the nuggets fried, the kitchen filled with the scent of the river and the satisfying crackle of fish hitting iron. Within minutes, each piece emerged with a crunchy crust and tender, flaky interior that needed little more than a squeeze of lemon or a dash of pepper. Families along southern waterways loved this recipe for its quick turnaround and ability to make a small catch stretch into a full meal. Children often grabbed the first pieces straight from the skillet, unable to wait for plates. Whether served with grits, tucked into bread, or eaten plain, these nuggets proved that fresh fish and a hot pan were all it took to bring a taste of abundance to even the humblest table. Catfish nuggets captured the essence of riverside living in every bite. Onion and pepper rice offered a fast path to a filling supper when time and ingredients were scarce. Leftover rice was tossed into a sizzling skillet with diced onions and bright bell peppers, the vegetables releasing their aroma as they softened. A drizzle of oil or a spoonful of bacon fat coated each grain, while a pinch of salt and a shake of pepper brought the flavors together. In under 10 minutes, the humble mix became a colorful, fragrant dish that could stand alone or serve as a hearty side. Families relied on this quick stir-fry to stretch yesterday's pot of rice into a fresh new meal, ensuring nothing went to waste. The sweet bite of onion and the gentle heat of peppers gave each spoonful a lively taste that felt far from leftover. This simple yet vibrant recipe showed how a few minutes and a hot pan could transform plain rice into something satisfying and comforting, a bright spark of flavor in kitchens that valued every grain. Sweet tea poached apples delivered dessert-like comfort in the time it took to brew a pot of tea. Strong black tea was sweetened generously with sugar, then sliced apples were slipped into the steaming liquid to simmer just long enough to soften. The fruit absorbed the tea's tannic depth and the caramel notes of the sugar, creating a fragrant syrup that clung to each slice. Served warm or chilled, the apples tasted like a cross between pie filling and candy, but required none of the time or expense of a traditional baked dessert. Families loved this recipe for its elegance and thrift, turning a handful of fruit and a basic brew into something memorable. The quick cooking process kept the apples tender yet intact, making them perfect for spooning over cornbread or enjoying straight from the bowl. Sweet tea poached apples proved that a few pantry staples could yield a treat with the flavor of an hours-long recipe in less than 10 minutes. Collard green wraps turned sturdy garden leaves into quick, portable bundles of nourishment. Fresh collards were blanched briefly in boiling water until pliable, then filled with seasoned beans, leftover rice, or even small bits of smoked meat. Rolled tightly, the wraps held together on their own, needing no elaborate binding or long cooking time. A splash of vinegar or a drizzle of hot sauce added brightness, while the gentle bitterness of the greens balanced the hearty fillings. These wraps were easy to assemble and ready to eat almost as soon as they were rolled, making them ideal for fieldwork lunches or busy mornings. Families appreciated how this dish stretched garden harvests and transformed simple ingredients into something satisfying and portable. Collard green wraps celebrated the creativity of cooks who made wholesome, flavorful meals out of what was at hand, proving that healthy, filling food could be prepared in a flash when necessity demanded quick solutions without sacrificing taste or nutrition. Skillet Johnny cakes brought a frontier tradition to the breakfast table in minutes. A simple batter of cornmeal, water, and a pinch of salt was poured directly onto a hot, dry skillet or lightly greased with lard. The cakes cooked quickly, forming crisp edges and a tender center with a distinct corn flavor that paired well with syrup or honey if available. Their speed made them a favorite for early mornings when long workdays loomed, and their hearty texture kept hunger at bay for hours. Families often made extra to pack for travel or field chores, as Johnny cakes held up well even when cold. This recipe's enduring popularity came from its straightforward ingredients and the way it transformed humble cornmeal into a warm, filling dish with almost no effort. Skillet Johnny cakes embodied the practicality and resilience of cooks who needed to feed many mouths with little more than a fire and a handful of grain, keeping tradition alive through every quick golden round. Okra fritters turned garden abundance into crispy delights that disappeared almost as fast as they cooked. Fresh okra was chopped and mixed with a light cornmeal batter spiced with salt and a pinch of pepper, then dropped by spoonfuls into hot oil. The fritters puffed and browned in moments, their edges crunchy, while the centers stayed tender and dotted with the subtle sweetness of the vegetable. Served hot, they provided a snack or side that felt festive even on an ordinary day. Families prized the recipe for transforming surplus okra into something everyone loved, especially children who might turn away from plain stewed greens. Quick, thrifty, and irresistibly tasty, okra fritters captured the essence of summer gardens and the joy of a shared meal. They proved that with a single skillet and a handful of ingredients, a busy cook could create a dish that brought people running to the table, eager for the first bite of golden steaming fritters straight from the pan. Spiced chickpea patties gave humble canned beans a lively, protein-rich makeover in record time. Chickpeas were drained, mashed with a fork, and seasoned with garlic, onion, and a sprinkle of warm spices like paprika or cumin before being shaped into small rounds. A quick sear in a hot skillet formed a crisp crust while the inside stayed creamy and fragrant. These patties delivered hearty flavor and satisfying texture without the need for meat. making them a welcome change for families stretching their resources. Served inside bread, alongside greens, or simply eaten by hand, they proved versatile and filling. Cooks appreciated how a single can of beans could feed several people in less than 10 minutes, turning pantry staples into a meal that felt far from ordinary. Spiced chickpea patties demonstrated the creativity and resilience of cooks, who refused to settle for bland food even in difficult times, bringing bold taste and quick comfort to tables where every minute and every ingredient mattered. Maple molasses popcorn turned the simplest grain into a warm, sweet snack with almost no cost and hardly any time. Kernels were popped on the stovetop until they leapt and burst, filling the kitchen with a nutty scent. A quick syrup of maple and dark molasses simmered just long enough to blend before being poured over the hot popcorn. Stirred quickly, every fluffy piece caught a glossy caramel coat that hardened as it cooled. Children would scoop handfuls into paper cones, the sticky sweetness clinging to their fingers while the faint bitterness of molasses kept each bite from being too sugary. Families cherished this treat during lean seasons because it transformed pantry staples into something that felt like a fairground indulgence. No oven was needed, only a pot, a spoon, and a few minutes of patient stirring to create a dessert that crackled as you chewed. Maple molasses popcorn proved that a bit of heat and a touch of sweetness could turn an ordinary evening into a small celebration without spending more than a few coins. Hoppin John Quick Bowl brought the spirit of a New Year feast to any day when time and ingredients were limited. Pre-cooked black-eyed peas and leftover rice were reheated together in a heavy skillet with scraps of smoked ham or whatever cured meat lingered in the icebox. A dash of cayenne or a splash of vinegar sharpened the flavors, and the aroma filled the room long before the first bite. In less than 10 minutes, the dish offered a complete meal of protein, starch, and smoky seasoning that kept bellies full through a long afternoon of work. Families who once saved this recipe for holiday luck began using it as a weekday lifesaver, proof that celebration food could become everyday comfort. The peas softened and mingled with the rice until each spoonful carried a gentle creaminess, while bits of ham added a salty chew. Hoppin John Quick Bowl showed how tradition and necessity could meet in a single sizzling pan, feeding many while wasting nothing. Bacon Drippings cornmeal mush gave breakfast a hearty lift without costing a penny more than yesterday's savings. Cornmeal stirred into boiling water thickened within minutes, becoming a smooth, steaming porridge. Instead of butter, the cook spooned in leftover bacon fat, letting it melt and release a smoky fragrance that promised energy for the day ahead. The drippings turned the humble cereal rich and savory, coating each grain with flavor, while adding precious calories for those who needed every bit of strength. Served hot in bowls or chilled until firm and sliced for frying later, the mush stretched a small pantry far beyond expectations. Families welcomed the way it turned a few spoonfuls of cornmeal into something warm and filling when money was tight. The aroma of bacon alone could lift morning spirits, and a drizzle of cane syrup or a sprinkle of pepper made it uniquely personal. Bacon Drippings cornmeal mush embodied thrift and comfort, a quick recipe that carried the memory of bigger breakfasts without requiring anything more than resourceful hands. Garden tomato sandwiches celebrated the height of summer with nothing more than thick slices of fresh tomatoes and sturdy homemade bread. A quick swipe of mayonnaise or even a brush of bacon grease stood in for fancy condiments, allowing the fruit's sweet tang to shine. The juice soaked into the bread as you bit down, turning each slice into a burst of sunshine and salt. These sandwiches required no stove, no long prep, only a few minutes at the kitchen table, and tomatoes still warm from the vine. Families working in fields or tending backyard gardens loved this meal for its speed and its reminder that the earth could still offer gifts even in lean times. Paired with a glass of sweet tea or a handful of pickles, it was as satisfying as any cooked lunch. Garden tomato sandwiches proved that freshness and simplicity could triumph over scarcity, turning a few ingredients into a feast that tasted of soil, sun, and summer rain. Fried green tomato bites brought a tangy crunch to kitchens when unripe fruit outnumbered ripe ones. Firm green tomatoes were sliced, dusted with seasoned cornmeal, and pans seared in hot oil until the coating turned crisp and golden. Their tart flavor mellowed as the heat worked through, leaving a bright, juicy center beneath the crunchy shell. Ready in minutes, these bites gave gardeners a way to use every tomato on the vine long before the last warm days faded. Families served them as snacks, side dishes, or tucked into bread with a drizzle of hot sauce for a fast sandwich. The sound of tomatoes sizzling in a cast-iron skillet became a signal that supper was close, and the sharp aroma of vinegar and cornmeal filled the room. Fried green tomato bites showed how a quick fry could turn even the least expected harvest into a dish worth gathering around, proving that nothing from the garden needed to go to waste when imagination met a hot pan. Mustard seed cabbage slaw offered a quick, crunchy side with a gentle bite that lifted any meal. Finely sliced cabbage was tossed with a vinegar, dressing heated briefly to bloom whole mustard seeds, releasing a warm, nutty spice. The hot liquid softened the cabbage just enough while keeping its crisp texture intact. Sugar added a touch of sweetness to balance the tang, creating a lively flavor that brightened everything from fried fish to cornbread. This slaw came together in minutes, making it a favorite for busy cooks who wanted freshness without fuss. Its golden specks of mustard seed dotted the pale green shreds like tiny jewels, turning a humble vegetable into something beautiful. Families carried it to church picnics or served it alongside everyday suppers, knowing it would stay crisp even as it cooled. Mustard seed cabbage slaw proved that a single bowl and a quick toss could deliver flavor and color that felt both celebratory and practical, a perfect companion to hearty mains or simple sandwiches alike. Peach skillet crisp transformed canned fruit and pantry staples into a fragrant dessert faster than an oven could preheat. Slices of sweet peaches, syrup and all, were poured into a hot cast-iron pan and sprinkled with a quick mix of flour, sugar, and a pinch of baking powder. A splash of milk and a bit of butter brought the topping together, forming a rustic biscuit layer that browned in minutes over steady heat. The fruit bubbled up through the cracks, coating the crust with caramelized juices that smelled of summer orchards. This recipe needed no careful measuring or long baking time, making it a lifesaver for last-minute guests or sudden sweet cravings. Served straight from the skillet with a dollop of cream if available, peach skillet crisp turned simple ingredients into something unforgettable. Families treasured the way it filled the house with warmth and comfort. Proof that even with limited resources, a true dessert could be created on the spot and enjoyed before the pan cooled. Molasses baked bean spread stretched a pot of beans into endless sandwiches and toast toppings with almost no effort. Cooked beans were mashed with a generous pour of dark molasses and a touch of mustard, then warmed until the mixture thickened into a glossy paste. Its deep, smoky sweetness made every bite rich and satisfying, whether spread on cornbread or spooned over rice. This quick preparation transformed leftovers into a brand new meal, saving time and ensuring nothing in the pantry went to waste. Families loved how the molasses added both flavor and extra calories, a welcome boost on long days of labor. Ready in under 10 minutes, the spread provided hearty nourishment and could be packed for work or school without spoiling. Molasses baked bean spread turned a simple staple into something exciting and portable, a reminder that, with a bit of creativity, yesterday's beans could become today's feast, carrying the taste of patience and thrift in every dark, sweet spoonful. Grits and crackling scramble combined creamy hot grits with the irresistible crunch of crisp pork cracklings for a dish that felt indulgent despite its simplicity. Quick cooking grits came together in a bubbling pot, while bits of leftover pork rind or belly sizzled in a small skillet until golden and crisp. The two were folded together just before serving, so each spoonful held both velvety smoothness and salty crunch. This breakfast needed only minutes but delivered a day's worth of comfort, a balance of textures that kept everyone coming back for seconds. Families treasured how it used scraps that might otherwise be discarded, turning frugality into a celebration of flavor. A pinch of black pepper or a drizzle of hot sauce made it even more memorable. Grits and crackling scramble proved that nothing from the hog went to waste, and that even the humblest ingredients could create a meal worth remembering when cooked with care and a quick, steady hand. Honey vinegar cucumber salad brought cool relief to hot days with a sweet tang that brightened any table. Thin slices of fresh cucumber were tossed in a dressing of warm honey and sharp cider vinegar, the mixture whisked together in moments. The cucumbers absorbed the flavors quickly, staying crisp while taking on a delicate balance of sweet and sour. A pinch of salt drew out their natural juices, creating a light brine that needed no long marinating. Served chilled or at room temperature, this salad was ready almost as soon as it was mixed, making it perfect for sudden guests or a quick accompaniment to heavy dishes. Families often kept a bowl in the icebox during summer, pulling it out whenever someone needed a refreshing bite between chores. Honey vinegar cucumber salad demonstrated that a handful of ingredients and a few quick stirs could create a dish that tasted like pure sunshine, cooling and bright in every crunchy golden slice. Tell us which 10-minute recipe you would cook first. Drop it in the comments. Tap like if these quick meals inspired you, and subscribe to keep these forgotten flavors alive in your own kitchen.